The 2004 film National Treasure not only fanned the flames of conspiracy, it also caused a large portion of kids to pay more attention in history class. Contrary to popular belief, men and women are from the same species. The Nicolas Cage-fueled scavenger hunt appealed to parents for its heavy dose of Americana and captivated children with its whimsical promise of glory. Yet, for whatever reason, there's a great deal of confusion on both parts on how to attract the other. As a child, you may not have been memorizing facts, but you certainly had a blast examining dollar bills and imagining elaborate heists. Part of the appeal in National Treasure is its ability to weave fiction through legitimate facts and locations in real life, all driven by Nicolas Cage's dry, matter-of-fact delivery of the mundane. Benjamin Gates Cage displays a stubborn belief in what he knows to be true and refuses to deviate from that path. It's a characteristic that appeals to adolescents and sets him apart from his predecessor, Indiana Jones. There's plenty of information out there on what someone should do to get the girl at the end. We all know the basics: have a good sense of humor, be confident, actively listen, all that good stuff. There are still some things, though, that not even women might realize they find attractive in a partner. That's not to say that there's some hidden puzzle that will unlock the secret to any woman's heart, no matter what some horribly misguided, pick-up artist, might tell you. That said, it's common sense that women are looking for someone who's a kind person and shows respect. Gates is a strong believer, while Jones is a skeptic. The hunt for treasure still holds a special place in our hearts. However, as an adult, skepticism comes a little bit easier. While younger audiences were distracted by the British swagger of Sean Bean, the humor of Justin Bartha, and what may lie at the end of the rainbow, adults couldn't help but notice these obvious, distracting moments. Benjamin Gates' grandfather and father look the same age. The beginning of National Treasure shows a young Benjamin Gates hunting through an attic in search of knowledge. The science here is just to give some insight into what the ladies in your life might be thinking every time you roll up your sleeves nonchalantly. Here are the secret things men do that women actually find attractive. Geek out about his passions. Teen movies in the 1980s imbued us with the idea that the geek never gets the girl. There's dark lighting, thunder, lightning, the whole shebang. And as he removes a dusty, ornately decorated book from the cobwebs and steps down a ladder, he comes face to face with his grandfather, Christopher Plummer. The Gates elder then tells him a family story that kicks off the whole film, all about missing treasure, the Knights Templar, and Freemasons. But a moment later, the two are joined by Gates' father, John Voight, who displays his disgust for the very concept of treasure hunting. So someone might think it would be a social disaster to start gushing about your love for Star Trek on your first date, but that might not be the case. Psychologist and PhD Jeanette Raymond told the site Ask Men, "A man who has a keen interest or passion in something outside of himself signals that he is able to take care of himself, make himself happy and utilize his time productively, which is a real turn-on." It turns out that it doesn't matter if it's your favorite sports team or Power Rangers that gets you excited. Some might call it geeking out, others say it's passion, but, according to dating expert Marc Katz, regardless of the topic, that's a huge positive in the dating world. Katz claims that women tell him all the time they want someone who's passionate. While younger audiences felt overwhelmed with the urge to prove the crotchety father figure wrong, adults were busy staring at the sandy blonde hair positioned on top of Voight's wizened face. He explains that if you're passionate, you exude confidence, which is always key in any social situation. Where read, this just goes to show you some of the weird things your brain does without you knowing. Also, immediately apparent is the fact that Voight and Plummer look about the same age, despite portraying father and son. That's because the two actors are only 9 years apart. At the time of the film's release, Voight was 65 and Plummer was 74. A study done by the University of Rochester shows that women find men wearing red more attractive than those that don't. Andrew Elliot, the study's lead author and professor of psychology at the university, concluded that women view men in red as higher in status, more likely to make money and more likely to climb the social ladder. But to a kid, old is old, and nothing seems off except for the fact that this treasure hasn't been found yet. And it's this high status judgment that leads to the attraction. There are a lot of possible reasons why we may associate red with power or dominance. Some scientists theorize that it's because red is associated with aggressive behavior, due to the reddening of the face when a person is angry. Adults, however, may already be distracted from the mythical Nicolas Cage in National Treasure. Is every road trip with your dad a crucial part of National Treasure as the comic relief we get from Riley Justin Bartha. The uninterested computer whiz just wants to find this treasure and get rich. But Benjamin Gates won't simply let him do his thing until they arrive at their destination. Instead, Gates never misses an opportunity to show off how big of a nerd he is by giving Riley a never-ending stream of history lessons. Red was also an expensive dye throughout history, and was relegated to the wealthy and royal. With each new development, Riley is subjected to a banal lecture about the history of every brick and stone. Perhaps our cultural assumption is that red means wealthy. There's even a brief moment where Riley knows something about history that the rest of the group doesn't, and thankfully, he soaks up the moment because immediately after sharing his knowledge, the dynamic shifts back with little acknowledgement as to his contribution. Sounds a bit familial, doesn't it? Anyone who's ever gone on a road trip with their dad as a kid remembers stopping at an empty field to read a plaque and knows exactly how Riley feels. And it's that history vacation vibe that makes their dynamic so funny and so relatable to the grown-ups watching. Whatever the reason, if you're a man, you might want to consider putting on a dash of scarlet for your next romantic venture. Be a good friend to his buddies. We all get by with a little help from our friends. Now imagine if each time your family minivan stopped off at some historic boulder, there was a group of trigger-happy thugs not far behind. A big part of being a good friend is being kind, and it turns out that women find that very attractive. Purdue University has found that when men have solid friendships, their likability with women increases significantly. Women furthermore rated traits such as ego support, conflict management, and comforting skills as the most important aspects of a relationship, romantic or platonic. In contrast, men rated persuasive and narrative skills as more important. If your female partner sees you exhibiting the same traits she values in your friendships, she'll see that as a sign that you are compatible together. While it should always be a goal to be kind, it doesn't hurt that women are more likely to rate a man's facial attractiveness and sex appeal higher when he exhibits trustworthiness, authenticity, and reliability. Act a little awkward. There is nothing that will make you feel more awkward than a first date. So why not use that to your advantage? According to dating coach Sarah Jones, a little awkwardness can endear you to a woman. It's a way to show that you're attracted to her, which is always flattering. As Jones told the site The Good Men Project, now the story involves her, and she's more invested in you than if you were showing no apparent interest. And if you're more than just a little awkward, that works too. Psychologist Cage Tashiro wrote a whole book touting the benefits of awkwardness. Awkward, the science of why we're socially awkward and why that's awesome. Tashiro explains that people who exhibit awkward behaviors see the world from a different perspective, which can be refreshing when getting to know someone. Yeah, it would definitely put a damper on learning about that 200-year-old pole or that ancient rock. Do as I say, not as I do. The first clue given to Gates is aboard a ship called the Charlotte, and in order to reach its Arctic location, he enlists the help of a mysterious benefactor named Ian Sean Bean. When the two discover that the next clue is on the back of the Declaration of Independence, they quickly conclude that the only way to find out for sure would be to steal it. However, Gates refuses to help Ian steal the historical document, so the two beef it out and blow up a ship, which lays out the good versus evil battle for the rest of the 2-hour scavenger hunt. Gates had dedicated his entire life to the pursuit of a treasure beyond all imagining. Even more encouragingly, Tashiro told the magazine Inc., "Kind people don't look down on awkward people." It displays nobility that he refuses to endanger the Declaration of Independence even though they're closer to achieving his life's pursuit. And awkward people can be interesting, bright, and motivated, and they can be loyal friends. Roll up their sleeves to their forearms. This is probably not that much of a secret to the ladies, but forearms are the unsung heroes of the male body. But then he twists his own logic around and decides that in order to protect the document, he must steal the document. Wait, what? So, rather than just work with Ian, who financed you up until this point, you told him no and then went off to do the same thing without him? That's pretty inconsiderate. Ian may have had experience in operations of questionable legality, but at every junction, he lays out his requests reasonably and is constantly telling his men to calm it down with all the shooting. There's even an entire subreddit dedicated to images of nice forearms. Don't worry, it's safe for work despite the title. As one of the great mysteries in our universe, no one truly knows why women love forearms. Maybe it's because we all grew up seeing the brawny man on our kitchen counter. Journalist Serena Golden interviewed several women about their love for the rolled-up sleeve. Forearms aren't a typical, glamour muscle, so they suggest useful strength in a way that, say, big biceps don't, one woman explained. A guy with big biceps looks great, sure, but a guy with big forearms can make bread or fix my car or build me a log cabin or some sh*t. Forearms, as it turns out, are casual enough to be non-intimidating, but powerful enough to bake bread. All the turmoil that developed throughout the film could have been avoided had Gates worked with Ian to do the same thing he was going to do anyway. The Declaration of Independence would have still been stolen, but no one would have been shot at. Or something. Cook, the days of Leave It to Beaver-style home life have long passed. The FBI wouldn't be on their heels. Men and women spend closer to equal amounts of time in the kitchen nowadays. Also, as a little bonus, they still would have found the treasure. Hacking into a government building looks pretty simple in National Treasure before they commit to stealing the Declaration of Independence. In true heist fashion, Riley lays out the impossibility of it all. The building is a fortress, and there are sensors, thermal monitoring, a vault surrounded by loads of concrete, the usual. However, it looks like women still get excited whenever they see their man at the stove. A team of British neuroscientists conducted an experiment of 20 couples via Daily Mail, with the women watching their male partners partaking in various tasks. Considering this as the most important document in the history of the United States, it would stand to reason that the entire building would be airtight, but not quite. While having their physiological responses monitored, women were more aroused watching their men in the kitchen than they were when he was doing more stereotypical, male, work, such as cutting wood. Cooking even outweighed other housework tasks like ironing or cleaning. It's nothing that a power tool and a laptop can't penetrate. And seriously, what's with the room that Riley just walks into and hooks up to the security cameras? Sure, your technological van guy needs eyes on the facility, but you would think a government building would have a few hoops to jump through. But not in National Treasure. No hoops at all. Riley waltzes into some random room that's unlocked and hooks up to the building's security cameras through a tube of wires. 70% of the women in the study preferred being made a cup of coffee to receiving gifts or an embrace. The power of a well-fed stomach should not be underestimated. As Dr. Nikki Goldstein, sexologist and relationship expert, told Daily Mail in response to the findings of the study, "Men can say, 'I care about you, I love you,' but when they make something tangible like a coffee, it shows them women they care. Sweat, it's time to make like Olivia Newton-John and get physical." The University of California, Berkeley has found that the scent of male sweat can make heterosexual women more sexually aroused. Now we're starting to see why being a bank robber seemed doable as a kid. In National Treasure, the Declaration is pretty easy to steal. In National Treasure, the characters spend a large amount of time explaining how impenetrable the security is around the Declaration of Independence. Gates and Riley are laughed out of both the FBI and Homeland Security for even suggesting that it could be stolen. The quick little CGI demonstration of the document being lowered into its vault makes it seem pretty secure. Well, except when it's moved to a different room on the same weekend as a big gala, where it's guarded by one security guard. Aside from the coincidental nature of the soiree they used to mask their heist, adults watching National Treasure were also left wondering why an entire section of the building was completely empty. Yes, really. A suave, tuxedoed Nicolas Cage saunters in and then scurries out carrying the whole case. The scientists at UC Berkeley found physiological and hormonal changes in women after they had smelled a compound found in male sweat. The compound contained the chemical androstenedione, which is a derivative of testosterone. The science community is currently unconvinced that humans exhibit typical animal pheromones. There's even a second way to penetrate the building's defenses, which Ian takes through a series of sewers and vents. This is despite various cologne advertisements trying to tell us otherwise. However, there is evidence that we are able to sniff out people who are genetically compatible with us. By this point in the film, it's apparent that nothing they're doing is all that difficult. However, this adds to the film's appeal. Perhaps this is why there are dating services dedicated to finding your lifelong mate through pure scent alone. You might be able to find your future wife by letting your sweaty self air out, but for the sake of the rest of us, please wear deodorant. Wear a T. If you thought the wearing red thing was weird, prepare to be in awe. It's not about the level of difficulty but more about the gathering of the necessary knowledge. All these clues were hidden in plain sight, and we just needed to know where to look. Apparently, wearing a plain T-shirt with just a black letter, T, on the front makes you more attractive. Still though, can we have them maneuver past more than just one friendly security guard? It is the Declaration of Independence, after all. Abigail Chase can't type. Luckily there are simple projects we did in school that stick with us for years, like baking soda volcanoes and macaroni drawings. To be specific, you're approximately 12% more attractive, according to research. Who, exactly, comes up with these studies anyway? On the plus side, you're going to be saving money on clothes. Psychologist Dr. Andrew Dunn explained, the wider barred T seems to emphasize the upper chest when upright, which accentuates men's optimum shape. That optimum shape is that upside-down triangle look you see on many a bodybuilder. The scientists found that a man with shoulders that were about 20% wider than his hips was most preferred. It's apparent that National Treasure's screenwriters dove back into their childhood to bring back the enchanting Invisible Ink project. All it takes is some lemons and a blacklight. Aside from the adolescent novelty of it all, it's a pretty big leap to assume that Abigail Chase Diane Kruger would appropriately handle the historic George Washington button gifted to her, saturating her fingers with the lemon concoction that Gates covered the button in. Her fingers then somehow retain enough of the fluid during her walk from her office down to the lower-level archives where they're applied to a security checkpoint keyboard. Plus, this entire plan hinged on the fact that an archivist working at the National Archives types with one finger. Kids are dazzled by the glowing fingerprints that present yet another puzzle to solve. Meanwhile, adults can't help but squint at the screen as Abigail forcefully punches in each individual letter on the keyboard. So yeah, it's pretty bold for this movie to presume that a blonde can't type. Why does Patrick Gates have so many lemons? There's a whole lot of lemon action happening in National Treasure. The important aspect is that accentuating the shoulders over the gut makes you appear more attractive. In addition to the compound that Gates makes to figure out Abigail's password, these fruits help our heroes decipher a code on the back of the Declaration of Independence. Anything that creates that top-heavy shape should suffice. After the characters have stolen the document, they find themselves at Patrick Gates' Voight house, examining the historical parchment. And it's a good thing there's a lemon nearby so they can gingerly swab the document in search of a hidden map. Once they discover it works, they seek out more lemons. If you really feel like being the weird dude wearing a giant T, though, far be it from us to judge you. Talk with a sleepy voice. No, this is not the same thing as pillow talk. In most households, a lemon or two may be standard. Studies have shown that women find men with deeper voices attractive. Those couple of lemons may even sit in the fridge for weeks until their purpose is revealed. However, there's an important factor that's even more important than pitch: breathiness. But history buffs dance to a different tune, apparently. Patrick Gates appears to lead a life of solitude, complete with pizza and soda for dinner in his bachelor pad, surrounded by history relics and books. Fellow adults were left wondering why such a man has a large portion of his fridge space being taken up by a large bowl of lemons. Scientists found that whether a voice was pitched high or low was less important than the voice's breathiness. This quality of voice is very similar to what a man might sound like when just waking up. The experimenters concluded that this phenomenon was due to body size.
For example, a higher pitch in a female voice typically indicates a smaller size, while a deeper voice usually denotes a man with a larger frame. However, the problem with a deep voice is that it can also be intimidating and suggest aggression. This is why the breathiness is so important. According to scientists, the breathiness in the male voice attractiveness rating. Perhaps the Gates patriarch is fighting off a kidney stone, or maybe sucking the sour citrus down to the rind each morning helps him feel alive. Could be a way of neutralizing the aggressiveness associated with a large body size. Thus, the association will be more like a cuddly teddy bear than a scary monster. Take risks. Miss Frizzle's sage advice to take chances, make mistakes, and get messy turned out to be a great dating tip. Whatever the reason, the treasure hunters are lucky he's such a fan of lemons. What's with the weird adjacent changing rooms? At one point in the film, Benjamin Gates and his crew are about to head off in search of their next clue. Women find men more attractive when they take heroic risks, according to various studies. Heroic is the key word here, as women do not prefer men who take non-heroic risks, such as playing dangerous sports. But they first stop off to change clothes. It's also very possible that bravery is more important than altruism when it comes to choosing a mate. This could explain why men with jobs as pilots, firefighters, and doctors are some of the most swiped right candidates on Tinder. John Petritis, psychology professor at the University of Alaska, further studied the effects when in conjunction with technology. He found that women found men more attractive when they would perform risky behavior in the wild, such as rock climbing in the back country, but would not be attracted to risky behavior in a modern society, such as driving without a seat belt. While changing in separate stalls, Gates and Chase display a rare moment of chemistry. Petritis suggests that this is evident of evolutionary practices, where behaviors that relate to a hunter-gatherer society are more attractive than those that aren't. Brood sometimes, we can actually unknowingly subscribe to traditional gender norms and values. Changing rooms in every store across America are a private endeavor, complete with personal lock and his and her sections. A study by the University of British Columbia has found that women find men more attractive when they are brooding than when they are showing happiness and smiling, at least at first impression. Even from a progressive standpoint though, the changing rooms these two are conversing in seem a bit revealing. The way the shot is set up also makes it appear as though the entire store is able to look in on them changing. They're stripping down to their skivvies with two weird Old West saloon doors barely covering them up to about chest height. It's certainly a different setup from the usual Urban Outfitters. While we'd like to believe that it's a quiet statement about equality and not being ashamed of our bodies, it's mostly obvious that the filmmakers wanted a still frame shot of both the stars talking. And while we don't know for sure, we're willing to guess that Disney laid out exactly how much skin could be shown, and they cut their little saloon doors out to their exact specifications. What's up with the FBI in National Treasure? When there's an incident like someone stealing the Declaration of Independence, it stands to reason that the FBI would be called in to hunt down the perpetrators. The lead researcher, Professor Jessica Tracy, stated, while showing a happy face is considered essential to friendly social interactions, including those involving sexual attraction, few studies have actually examined whether a smile is, in fact, attractive. Supposedly, brooding is a sign of pride, which is evolutionarily attractive to females. After all, the FBI has a vast arsenal of knowledge and resources at their disposal. The leader of the task force, Sadusky, Harvey Keitel, has all the characteristics of a smart and efficient team leader. Tracy further concluded, the results appear to reflect some very traditional gender norms and cultural values. But despite all these attributes, there seems to be little noise heard about the British gunmen chasing Americans across the country, firing clip after clip around national monuments. There are several instances when loads of bullets are unloaded at Gates and the gang. National Treasure filmmakers would have you believe that the silencers the bad guys have on their guns mask all the mayhem in obscurity, but adults see right through the facade. These include norms and values that many would consider old-fashioned and perhaps hope that we've moved beyond. While we're all trying to evolve our understanding of gender, maybe it's time for women to start telling men they should frown more as a response whenever men ask them to smile.
Keep on the uniform. Are men really more attractive when sporting a uniform? Science says it all depends. Silencers don't completely silence the sound of a gunshot, and it's hard to ignore a woman and two men running for their lives while being chased by burly men brandishing pistols. So, not a single alert was passed along to the FBI about any of this. Evidently not. In fact, the upper echelon of investigation observed Gates buying something with a credit card at a party he wasn't invited to, and they ran with it hard. So much for innocent until proven guilty. Trust me to drop you the Declaration of Independence spends most of National Treasure encased in a sturdy tube within another sturdy tube. It gets blow-dried. As part of a study conducted by the University of Southampton, via Good Housekeeping, women were asked to rate the attractiveness of men in 3 heroic contexts: warfare, sports, and business. In the end, the participants were more likely to find a soldier good-looking, and, if he happened to win any bravery medals during his service, the women were more willing to date him. It gets covered in lemon juice. It gets thrown into traffic. But luckily, it doesn't fall a few stories in a mine shaft, thanks to the quick thinking and impeccable timing of the one and only Nicolas Cage. Historical significance aside, there's little doubt that every adult couple watching National Treasure got a sideways glance when Ben dropped Abigail in order to save the tube of history. The logical decision would have been to save the girl and let the document drop down the shaft safely in its durable casing. War heroes were also found to have sired more offspring than other veterans. According to the study, this supports a causal link between war heroism and mating success. That's not to say only military uniforms make women swoon. Men may not put as much effort into dress and grooming as do women, but clothing is still important because it speaks to their social status, biopsychologist Nigel Barber explained in an article for Psychology Today. He wrote, "Women who reject a man in a Burger King uniform might be willing to date someone in medical scrubs. That may explain why some men don their uniforms outside of work. Embrace their grays if you've ever found yourself attracted to an older man, ahem, George Clooney, ahem, you're not alone." In fact, this phenomenon has been labeled the, wait for it, George Clooney effect. Checks out. Previous research shows that men place greater importance on physical attractiveness when picking a partner, whereas women focus much more on whether someone can provide material resources. Fiona Moore, psychologist and lead author of a study on the sex differences in mate preferences, told Psych Central, "We'd assumed that as women earn more, their partner preferences would actually become more like those of men, with a tendency towards preferring younger, more attractive partners rather than those who can provide and care for children. Instead, Moore said she and her team discovered that, more financially independent women actually preferred even older men. It makes sense, then, that women are also into gray hair. They were all headed down to the bottom anyways. Even Ben can't believe he made that choice. When Abigail says she would have done the same thing, he stares back at her, bewildered, and whimpers, really. The chemistry between the two leads is off, and it rubs any grown human the wrong way. The young National Archive employee went from her posh office to being kidnapped, shot at, and dropped down a mine shaft, then succumbs to the charms of a 40-year-old treasure hunter. A Match.com survey via Men's Health found that 72% of women find men with gray hair attractive. Who was the one who dropped her, by the way? While some guys may want to cover up their stray grays to appear younger, others are rocking them knowing there's plenty of women searching for a silver fox. Seems reasonable. Who's that hiding in the shadows? Quick thinking and vast historical knowledge across 2 generations leaves the crew stranded at the bottom of some catacombs but free of Ian's strong-arm tactics. And once our heroes escape back out into fresh air, Ben contacts the FBI and offers Sadusky someone to send to jail. The Freemason obliges and sets off to arrest Ian for a slew of charges. Benjamin Gates tags along because the discovery of an enormous treasure room isn't enough for the glory hunter. The historian portrays an urge to rub it in Ian's face with some drama. When Sadusky arrests Ian outside the church he was led to, Gates steps out from the shadows in a nearby doorway to smile at Ian. It stands to reason that all the FBI agents were positioned nearby, ready to pounce, but what was Ben's story there? The man went from facing a lifetime in prison to having the FBI let him lurk on someone's front porch in the shadows. There must have been a significant amount of time that he was waiting there, hiding from the light. It does make the ending pretty humorous, picturing Nicolas Cage hiding in a dark doorway, brimming with excitement as he hears the chains on the nearby church clink against the bolt cutters. The history dork having to apply every ounce of his patience not to reveal himself as he hears the sirens approaching. Then the breathing exercise he implements while Sadusky reads Ian his rights. Now is his moment. A smug Ben steps into the light,